In the Bible, Paul explains that everyone has two bodies, a physical body and a spiritual body. Mediums use their spiritual bodies when they act as a communication bridge between the physical and spirit worlds. As a spirit speaks, mediums hear the information using the ears of their spiritual bodies, then repeat the information to other physical people. Mediumship is synonymous with the biblical term gifts of the Spirit. The focus of our show, Making Known the Unknown, is to provide knowledge through the use of Reverend Hewitt's mediumship and Sidney Schwartz's research. The Bible contains the history of psychic events, along with man-made doctrines created by priests centuries ago. This show will explore the untruths which the Bible entrenched into our society. By uncovering these untruths, we encourage people everywhere to think for themselves with a critical mind.
Hello, and welcome to Making Known the Unknown. I'm your host, Tina Tarryk, and with me are my experts, Sidney Schwartz, middle school teacher from Hackensack, New Jersey, and Bible researcher. Welcome, Sidney.
Hi, Tina.
And Reverend Carl Hewitt, founder and pastor of Gifts of the Spirit Church, right here in Chesterfield, Connecticut, and medium. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you.
Okay, and welcome to our viewers. As we have mentioned many times before, to get the most out of these programs, other than calling the studio and paying for a copy, you could put a VHS tape into your VCR and have a free copy of this show. What I find most interesting with doing this work and working with these gentlemen is that you'll look at the tape once, twice, 3 times. You might end up looking at this TV show tape 10 times before you can get everything out of it that is jam-packed with information. And some of you may need to watch it longer because perhaps you know that there's some thread of truth in there, but you're not quite sure what it is. So there's something in your brain that's been blocked, and it needs to be removed. The blockage needs to be removed so you can see what the truth really is that's going on. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. With that, I want to let our viewers know that the title of today's show is Angels. I'm sure all of you hear this term on a daily basis, referred to with almost every aspect of everything we do every day. There are TV programs that are including angels not only in their title, but in what they are attempting to do in their actual programs. And what we thought we would do is to give you the real scoop on what angels really are and aren't. So with that, I'm going to ask my first question, and I think I'm going to turn it over to Sid. My first question is, what are angels?
Well, it's an interesting question which has more than one answer. There are different philosophies about angels. There are many people who believe that angels are supernatural beings. They're beings that live in the spirit world, in other words, who have never incarnated, that there's a whole hierarchy of angels. There are, in the Bible talks about cherubim and seraphim, and each of those angels have different jobs to do in the spirit world, and so forth. Other people simply think that angels are just spirit people, and probably from the higher dimensions of the spirit world, who can lower their frequency down and manifest themselves to influence human beings, such as mentioned in the Bible several times. So those are the two main philosophies, and not being a medium myself, I'm not sure which it is. What do you say, Carl?
Well, there are a lot of people on this planet that I have met that I would label them as angels because they're good people. And these people, when it comes time for them to pass over, they go to another dimension where other good people go. And the only way of communicating with us is through mediumship. It's the way it's always been, mediumship. And today we're very familiar with telephones, radio, that type of thing of communicating with each other. Well, the spirit people use mediumship, so they they can tell a person that has the gift of mediumship by the light around them. This is why Jesus tried to get people to understand he was the light of the world. He was one of the greatest mediums that has ever come to this planet. And the people can see that light, and if that person is near or other people, someone connected with those people in the other dimension could use the medium to convey a message to them. And so angels are the good people that were here, now live in the other dimension and communicate through a medium.
Okay.
And then so many people have been taught that this is not the real thing, and these are demons, you know, and all of that. That isn't true at all.
Okay.
And the one thing that these entities have told me, they said there is no one in the physical world that has any power over those in the spirit kingdom. I want that message out there, loud and clear. There is no one here in the physical that has any power over anyone in the other dimensions.
So when you're saying, like in 1920, when the Pope canonized Joan of Arc as a saint, it really didn't affect the soul of Joan of Arc?
No, it didn't affect it at all, not a bit.
Very interesting. Now, okay, so angels were people once physically in the living who are now in other dimensions and will continue to work through mediums to help convey messages and so on. What about the whole notion of wings on angels?
It's because sometimes the spirit would come to a medium. Now, we're going way back.
Yeah.
When people are more ignorant than they are today. They're only a tiny bit smarter today. And so this medium would always look up as if they were looking at a bird or something up there somewhere, and they think that they have wings. That's where all that nonsense came from.
Okay.
Well, they were coming from a higher vibration.
Higher rate of vibration.
And sometimes when a spirit person would appear, since they're not physical, okay, they might not, their feet might not even touch the ground. They might be hovering. They might be off the ground. So therefore, people misinterpreted, well, the only way you can get off the ground is if you had wings. Okay, so they must have wings flapping around to keep them off the air.
Excellent way to put it.
Okay, all right. So then, you know, we just passed the Christmas season, and what came to my mind is one of the many Christmas carols about angels we've heard on high, and that just means they're in another dimension.
They're in a higher frequency than we are.
Okay.
Yes.
But I thought that only angels spoke to God, or angels work with God as a communicator. What about that connection?
Yeah, but you're looking at it as if God is one person. He's the head of the whole flock.
Right.
That isn't true. God is within every person. Every person. I don't care how bad that person is. God is in that person. It's how that person lives. Now, talking about angels, this picture here, which is brand new on our set today, this picture, to me, the lady that that painted this picture, she's as close to being an angel as anybody I've ever met. She was a nun for 27 years, and it was even before she became a nun. She was influenced to paint, and there are two wonderful painters. We're going back several hundred years ago. These painters was on the earth plane. They stand one stands on one side of her, one stands on the other side. I've seen this, and they manipulate her hands. To me, she's a living angel now. When she passes, she'll go to one of the higher dimensions where the other good people will go.
Okay.
You see?
Yep. All right.
Carl, would you differentiate between a spirit control and an angel? Are they one and the same?
They're one and the same.
Well, spirit
But they
control.
don't want me to call them that.
Well, for most people, they don't understand, but they are familiar with, I should say, the term angels. When you say spirit control, I think you've lost most of the people who are out there. What does spirit control mean to you?
Okay, Jesus had a spirit control and he had a spirit teacher. He tried to demonstrate that to his students, his three advanced students, Peter, James, and John. His spirit control was Moses, and his spirit teacher was Elijah. And the night that he was doing this healing service, remember now, he could not go into a temple because the priest would know where he was, and they were following him. They were keeping their eyes open because it was the priest that crucified him. They wanted to get rid of him because they couldn't compete with him. And so that particular night, he heard his spirit control speak, which was Moses, And he says, tonight I want you to go through the crowd and find your most advanced students, which was Peter, James, and John, have them follow you. Get away from all of that negative energy, and we have a message for you. And so he went through the crowd, got the 3 guys to follow him, and they couldn't imagine, where is he going with all these people to be healed here? Why is he leaving them? And so they walked away, and they went up what I call like a logging road up, and they stopped at one place, and they were not talking. He did not say a word to them. He said, follow me. And they got to a point, and he stopped. He hesitated. He was checking the energy there, see if it was good. And he shook his head, no. He went further. He went further. He went to a higher level here, and then it was just perfect. He sat down, and he waved to them to sit in front of him. So they sat down here in front of him, 1, 2, 3. And it was then that they were watching him, wondering, what the heck are we doing here? And they started noticing that this substance, like smoke, which was really ectoplasm coming from Jesus' body, it built up here, and pretty soon these faces formed. And it was Moses and Elijah in spirit. They were the ones that was his control and his teacher, just like I have Lone Eagle and Lone Wolf.
Okay.
And the reason I have Indians is I don't know of any medium on this planet, whether it's in England or where it is, that does not have American Indians, because they were very good people. They knew about the spirit world. They were not into this hocus pocus that religions have created.
So now you're saying that only mediums have a spirit control, as far as one being a teacher and one being a guide? Or does everybody have this around them?
Everybody has friends that are in the spirit world, but because of the mind control that people are into, they can't recognize them. I mean, there's the spirit people, it's like they're banging their head against a stone wall trying to get through.
So these people who you would call dedicated to you, with you, would that also be another way to talk about guardian angels? We hear people talking about that all the time.
Yeah.
That they're guiding you, guarding you from what? What do you think?
From taking the wrong path.
Okay, all right. So they really are there to help you.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a lady that came into me, I'll never forget this. This was quite a few years ago. And she came in, and there was a beautiful lady that followed her right into the room. And as the lady sat on the little couch there, there was this beautiful lady that stood behind her. And I said to this lady, I said, why do you still call your mother the devil? Oh, I don't call my mother the devil. I says, but she's been talking to you, and you always think it's the devil. Oh, but the church told me it was the devil. It was not my mother. I said, all these years, your mother's been talking to you. Here was a medium that had not developed. Here was a medium that never went to anyone that would tell her the truth, you see? Yeah. And so it was one of those days that this woman, I can't even put it in words, when she found out the real truth about it.
Oh
all the time it was her own mother who had passed when she was quite young, and that was trying to get through to her.
Okay. So now, lately, I have been watching some shows on this same mission, and I happened to stumble upon a show some time ago where 2 pastors of a local church were explaining to people that angels work with God and demons work with the devil. So demons and angels are messengers. And of course, if you've been watching this show and you even have the slightest notion about what really is and isn't, it would seem to me that that's a very plausible explanation. That you don't want to listen to demons, you want to listen to angels, but only from God. So this woman is saying to you that her beliefs or her understanding is that if she's speaking to anybody in the spirit world, then it must be the devil. But in fact, it really was her mother. So I guess what I'm getting at is, how would people know the difference between one or the other if in fact that's true, which is another story.
Part of what you said is true, because in Hebrew, the word for angel is malach, which means messenger.
Okay.
So that part's accurate.
All right. But does the devil have messengers running around?
There is no such thing as the devil. I'm trying to get that across to the people out there watching these programs. There's no such thing. I demanded to know if there was a devil and if there was a hell. I said, I will not do this work for you unless you give me a straight answer to this.
Right.
And because talking about being stubborn, well, I'm one of those stubborn people. And they said that was created by the church in the year 325, starting in the month of June, and it went all the way to 386.
Okay. I guess I kind of set you up with that question, because what I'm really saying is, if the church says don't talk to anyone in the spirit world because they could be demonic or influence you to the negative, how do you know the difference between one or the other?
So they don't want you to know,
Right.
because they don't want you to talk to
Right.
anybody.
Right.
They do want you to know, because if people learn the truth about this, you don't need to go to church. That's a business.
Right.
You don't need any of that stuff.
Okay.
The Bible even talks about having the devil in heavenly places, or evil beings in the heavenly places. That's how much they want to confuse the people,
Yeah.
that any voice that they hear, they should ignore.
That is very confusing.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question I had is there any such thing as entities not having been in the physical that maybe are around us? You've talked about at other times masters from other planetary systems. I'm not quite sure if they ever held a physical form and then they died. Or are there really ones that have never had a physical form and they kind of float around and advise people? Is there such a thing as that? Or are we really just talking about aliens?
I'm not sure about that. I haven't even gotten into asking those questions.
Okay, all right.
Of,
So if we are influenced or we're communicating with spirit, it has always been some entity that was in physical form first and then passed beyond. Because I know that I've heard somewhere in there that there are others, but I'm not quite sure.
Well, let me put it this way. We attract to us exactly as we are. If you're a good person, you only attract good people to you.
Right.
If you were an evil person, that is the only type that we're attracting. The law of attraction is always in motion. Like goes to like.
Okay.
You see?
I've been at a couple of meetings at your church where a few times tapes have been played that was through the mediumship of another person in this country.
Yeah.
And the information coming to them and the voices that we were hearing were from entities who never held a physical form. And in fact, these entities seemed like they were advising this person and then in turn trying to teach all of us, but yet they really wouldn't fall into that category of spirit control or an angel. And so I'm remembering all of this, and I'm wondering if there's some of that going on too.
I think so, but I'm not sure. I haven't gotten into
Okay,
that.
all right.
I figured I have to come back a couple more lifetimes before I get into that.
Okay. And then this kind of gets into, in general, your soul and them communicating to you and your soul being open to understand them.
Your soul is located, and I want the people that's just watching this program for the first time, I want you to understand that your soul is right behind the breastbone, out of harm's way. When the human body was first created, probably millions, billions of years ago, who knows, that's where the heart was. The heart was behind that. Heart is only a pump. That's all it is. And they withdrew that model. Let's call the body a model now. And they withdrew it, and because they didn't allow a place for the soul. So they withdrew the body, and they moved the heart from behind the breastbone over here a little bit to the left, so that the soul would have a place out of harm's way behind the breastbone. And the soul is just like a computer. It records everything you think about, everything you learn, everything. So when you learn the truth as Jesus and learn to know you the truth, and the truth will set you free, you people that's listening to this program, and the knowledge that's coming from this program is being recorded in your soul, right here, and it's held there forever and ever and ever. And if, for instance, you're taught through mind control, exactly what you're hearing through mind control, and the governments teach it, the churches teach it, and so that mind control is here. And they've recently told me, I'm talking about those in the other dimension, they've recently told me that the virus, the worst virus that's ever been created by man on the planet, is the virus of the devil and hell hellfire and all of that stuff, because some of you people out there just hearing what the three of us is discussing on this program, instantly when you hear what we're saying, the virus shuts you down and you don't hear a word we're saying.
That's a very good analogy. I like that.
It's a virus. And they know what they're doing by keeping pounding this away. And going back a while ago when you said something about these two ministers that were talking, you know, well, you see, since they've got their mind on that, they're creating that in their mind, and the mind and the soul, everything we learn is downloaded in the soul. When they die, they're going to go to a place because they created it.
Okay. Now, you know, in other instances, when we talk about spirit speaking to people in the physical, sometimes there's someone you don't know who you might not have been familiar with that passed away in this lifetime. It might have been somebody from other lifetimes. So if you think about the potential there for as many lifetimes as you've had and how many people may want to, entities I should say, may want to contact you or communicate with you, it's almost limitless. And then the other comment I had about that is the validity or the reason why people from other lifetimes would want to come back to talk to you, communicate with you, or work with you. What do you think about that?
Well, there's a lot of people in the other dimension that want to guide us and help us here all the time. I mean, I don't understand many of the languages of the people that's with him. They speak I don't understand Hebrew at all.
Okay.
And I don't understand Canadian French or any of these other languages, because while everybody else is getting an education, I was out there trying to find some truth, because I was determined to commit suicide because I couldn't deal with any of this stuff. So I left school and searching, as I said before, in every building that had a steeple on it to get answers. And I don't feel I wouldn't ruin my day today by saying how I was treated by all these people. I mean, it was unbelievable how I was treated. But I can say this much, and this is the gospel truth. We live after we die. I don't care who you are or what you do, you live after you die. But you live in an environment that you created yourself. If you're a good person, you're going to die and go to a dimension where other good people are.
Okay.
As simple as that. Doctors, physicians that really loved helping other people, they can work through you. And when you do your prayer by saying, Lord God of my being, unto the Father within, come forward this moment, this hour, and while my body sleeps tonight, come forward and heal my body, your temple, and it will be done. But you got to remember that most people hearing this program, they're so shut down that they do not understand what we are teaching here. We're trying to get the people to think for themselves. When you do, you start thinking for yourself, you'll realize that God is within you, not in some piece of real estate in the sky. It's all man-made stuff.
Now, you've also mentioned before that that there isn't anybody at one time or other that has not heard their name called out. And when you refer to that, I'm assuming that you're talking about someone in the spirit world who might be considered an angel, a guardian angel, a spirit control, trying to communicate with them.
Well, that's when we have a seance and we have those pictures that appear, those people write their names on the cards. They write them.
Okay.
The medium doesn't write them.
Okay. What do you think the benefit could be from someone in another lifetime communicating to you now?
Sure.
Do you think that there's a benefit to that? I'm going to ask Sidney that question here.
Well, you have to remember that the people living in the spirit world are in a timeless dimension, so they can see our present, past, and future.
Oh, okay.
So they can very easily see into our future and tell us what's coming up and advise us on which road to take, decision to make. It doesn't matter if they know you from a past life or not, because it's a timeless dimension over there. So that would be the benefit of that.
Okay. Could there be a reason because maybe in this particular lifetime you're going to do something to correct something you didn't do in another lifetime, or to pull from the energy
All that's,
from that time?
All that's possible, yes.
Okay, all right. I'm thinking about past life regressions. I'm thinking about how some psychotherapists or hypnotherapists use this as a tool to help people unlock problems that they might be having in their current lives. And perhaps these people aren't able to be mediums where they can speak to and they can see spirit controls or angels. And I'm wondering what you think about, I guess, past life regression in general.
Well, it's a technique that's used in order to get people to relive the experience, and it's thought that by reliving it and bringing it into the present consciousness, that at that point you could either work on it or resolve it much easier than it being some fuzzy notion that you have subconsciously that you don't know why you're reacting to it.
Right, right.
And a lot of people find out that they've had experiences where they died like falling off of something, and that's why they have a fear of falling in this life. So because your soul is a recorder and it records your experiences of your past life, a lot of your memory is there, but you don't necessarily tap into it consciously. It acts on a subconscious level and can make you. The subconscious can influence you to react a certain way where you don't have to if you have resolved the issue by reliving it.
So it kind of seems like the theme is to keep that door open, keep that communication line going. However, you can get that to help you through the help of a professional, through a medium, or yourself work on developing yourself to do that. It seems to be crucial, not something that should be shut down.
Sure.
Okay. I think you had some examples that you wanted to share with us from the Bible, perhaps?
Oh, but dealing with angels?
Yeah.
Sure. We're going to start off talking about Abraham in the Bible. In chapter 18 of Genesis, it starts out, "And the Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre. He was sitting at the tent door in the heat of the day. And when he lifted his eyes and looked, behold, 3 men were standing opposite him. And when he saw them, he ran up to the tent door and bowed himself to the earth." Here in this first picture you see on the screen, you can see that these three people that came to him had wings. In the next picture you're going to see, the wings aren't there, and it's just 3 men. There's a lot of confusion in this story whether it was really angels or really men, and it starts off saying that the Lord spoke with him. Well, if you look at this picture, which one's the Lord?
Right.
Because you think of the Lord as this big important God that's sitting up there.
Right.
So he was in communication with these 3 spirit people, one of which is called the Lord. And you know, this story I find so interesting because it goes on. Abraham offers to prepare them some food, and it says in verse 6 of chapter 18, "So Abraham hurried to the tent to Sarah and said, 'Quickly prepare the measure of fine flour and knead it and make cakes.' And Abraham ran also to the herd and took a tender choice calf and gave it to the servants, and he hurried and prepared it. And he took curds and milk and the calf which he prepared and placed it before them as they were sitting under the tree, and they ate." Well, what's so interesting as far as being Jewish and reading this is that the Orthodox Jewish people believe in the kosher laws where you don't eat milk with meat.
Right.
And here you have Abraham, who's the first Jewish person, supposedly, having the Lord as his guest, serving him food of milk and meat, and yet this is forbidden. Now, during the Passover Seder, which is the meal that they celebrate at Passover time, they talk about the fact that Abraham knew all the stuff that was going to happen in the future. This event that we're talking about actually occurred on Passover, yet he didn't know enough to know the kosher laws. So the question goes, did God get an upset stomach and he hadn't invented Pepto-Bismol, and that's why he said you shouldn't eat milk and meat together? I mean, you get into all these kind of discussions here. The last picture that was up on the screen showed Abraham talking to, quote, the Lord, and it was just a singular spirit person that was there. Because Abraham was clairaudient, he heard God's voice many times. He even told him to move from where he was living in Haran, which was in Iraq, over into Shechem, which was in Israel. And he was the one that commanded Abraham to move to this psychic center, because Shechem was a place where psychic people gathered and to live there. So this is the first story in the Bible where we talk about angels. And again, it seems to be confused, whether it's God or an angel. And what's interesting is when we're going to go to our second story, which deals with Moses, it's the same problem. We're going to start reading in Exodus chapter 2, I believe, where the burning bush took place. Chapter 3, I'm sorry. Now Moses was pasturing the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountains of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him. Notice it says, and the angel of the Lord appeared to him, and in the blazing midst of the fire of the bush, and he looked, and behold, the bush was burning, and there was no fire. And as it continues, and it says, so Moses said, I must turn aside now and see this marvelous sight, why the bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. He said, here I am. So first it said it was an angel, then it said it was the Lord. Well, which is it? It's the same thing you have with Abraham. Was it the angel or was it the Lord?
Right.
So it's the same discrepancy. In this picture here, you see there's three people in the bush. There were the angels and the Lord. And in one of the other pictures you saw, it was just the fire, and in one of the other pictures you just saw one single person. Right. So the artists don't really know how to draw this because the Bible is so nebulous about what's going on that it's really kind of they don't know what to say. This story is kind of interesting because when Moses is talking to God, God tells him to go to Pharaoh and tell him to let his people go, and Moses says, I don't want to do that. I don't speak well enough, the Bible says. I'm not eloquent. I have a speech impediment, some Bibles translate it, which is a mistranslation because the word there is actually the tongue. He didn't have the language to speak to the Hebrew people. But he argues with God, and God gives in. He wins over God, the creator of the universe. So you would think that if this was really what people think of as God, as this big guy in the sky with all his powers, why didn't he just reach down, bop him on the head and said, you're healed, go speak? Right. Why didn't he correct your situation? Right. Why did he in turn go and say, well, your brother can speak for you, and he said, and he will be as God to you? Well, how can a person be God to another person? Right. What they're talking about is a hierarchy between the spirit person, the medium, and the people. That God would speak to Moses. Moses would then repeat it to Aaron, and Aaron would take it to the people. Aaron was going to be the medium between Moses and the people, but the message was coming from the spirit person. So he was making this comparison. So this is how they're teaching psychic phenomena here.
That's right there. Just those few passages you went back and forth between, very inconsistent with what angel means, God, Lord. Very confusing. It is. And yet people buy into this.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
And you can see from the pictures that we showed that even the artists don't know what to do with it. They say it keeps showing different things because of the way it is. It's not really clear.
Well, the artists were living in that time. They had a religion. If they were earning money for their art, that was their career. Right. You better believe that they're going to paint it the way the church wanted to see it, or they're not going to get any money for it.
That's right, exactly.
And of course, that makes me think of the Da Vinci Code with a few other things, but that is probably topic for another show.
Yes.
But they had to be politically correct too, all the artists. So who knows what they really themselves believed? Right. Who knows?
Elijah was another prophet that had experience with an angel. Because basically what happened to him was that he went to the king and he basically told the king off. He told him that he prophesied that there was going to be a drought, and then he fled away. He fled for his life. And it talks about an angel that appeared to Elijah and brought him food. Here you see a picture of that, where he brought him food to eat on his journey because he was actually fleeing. And so it gave Elijah sustenance. And later it says that the Lord told him to go to the city and this woman would protect him. So that was the another story in the Bible where angels are directly mentioned.
Now this reminded me about a point earlier that I'd forgotten to mention. This angel is helping provide Elijah with food.
Yes.
But earlier on, Abraham is providing the Lord, which could have been one person or three people with food and drink. Right. And in the spirit world, they don't need that. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So we went through all of that, butchering an animal, slaughtering an animal, whatever. And they don't need that to
Right.
survive. So what's that about?
Well, it has to do with the laws of hospitality in those days.
Okay.
That this story is showing that Abraham is feeding his visitors, and taking care of them, making sure that providing for their well-being.
Right.
It's also contrasted, which was in the very next chapter. Lot does the same thing when the angels come to visit him. He brings them into his house and protects them against what happened in the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. But there's a lot of mythology dealing with that particular story.
Right.
But it's some people think that it was meant to contrast the two, because the actuality, the spirit people really didn't need the food.
Okay. Now, the two of you have had a very close encounter with an angel of sorts, and I would like you, I'm going to start with Carl, I think, to explain how the influence for this, your first book, came to be. My First Encounter with an Angel, and the entity in here that's called Awan. What can you tell us about that, Carl?
Well, this young man came to me one time and for a reading, and he didn't have any idea what I did. And as soon as I went into the reading room, the entity spoke to me. That is Awan. Awan meaning angel without a name. And he said, tell him to take the gun out of his pocket and put it on the desk. He had a gun under his coat. Well, the gun was he was going to use on himself that day. He was going to commit suicide because he was gay, and he did not want to be gay because everybody in the college and everybody was making fun of him because he really was a young man that was, somebody would say he's too pretty to be a male, you understand? And he had trouble dealing with that, so he was going to kill himself. So his aunt sent him to me because she said maybe he can help you because he's clairvoyant. And so he came, and then when the entity said, you have a question, you want to know why things are the way they are in your life. And then evidently he hesitated, and he said that the Hebrew, him, since he's into books, he's a librarian, he has a question about a young boy that is in his school that was asking for a book or something, because evidently this boy thought that he had feelings for males, but he didn't like it. Right. And so this entity, Awan, would not read for that guy that day, but said he would read for him at another time when he was in the room with him.
Okay.
Because that way, he would give the answer to both of them, to this other person and to Sidney. Okay. And so Sidney was called, and he came up a week after that in the room, and this entity was very powerful. I remember distinctly coming out of the trance. I was exhausted, I was tired, and it looked like he was pale. It looked like he'd been crying. He said to me afterwards, he says, I have never felt such power in my life as I have felt in this room with this entity, you see. But this entity would never give me his real name because he says, at the present time you have about 12,000 religions on your planet and you don't need another one. And if I told you who I was, somebody would create a religion in my name. And he says, I will not allow that. Okay. And so that's why that book was written. And he tells a lot of things in this book to him, because I'm in trance, because I don't know anything about it until I read the book or I listen to the tapes.
Right, okay.
And this is how that book started. And they explained to him, because he's more of a medium than he admits he is. So they showed him this vision of this entity, and I think he borrowed it. He borrowed it from the Vatican Library.
No, that place it's in some chapel in Naples, I believe. That image of that angel, we found that in a book, but the picture behind it of the clouds was actually a picture that I had taken on a cross-country trip. So we put the two images together.
Personally, I never liked this, but I didn't say anything about it. I let him put it on there because he was doing so much work with the book. Because it looks like an angel with a sword that is not for a good purpose, if you understand what I mean.
Right.
Well, it's actually supposed to be the Archangel Michael, and he's the one who's supposed to be going after ignorance and things. So that's the reason that was chosen. That brings up the subject of archangels. We talked about the cherubim and the seraphim. Archangels is another. They're supposed to be the highest class of angels, according to people who believe in all this hierarchy.
Okay.
As far as I understand it, from what I've been told, it's basically these angels would be on the different levels of the spirit world, with maybe the archangels being on the highest levels, but I'm not quite sure.
There are many dimensions.
Yes, there's at least 7 major dimensions in the spirit world.
Okay.
And within that dimension, there are many dimensions.
All right.
Many dimensions.
Did you have something you wanted to show us on those dimensions?
Yeah, we could, if the control room could change the tape and put on get the tape ready, and I'll talk a little bit while this is going on.
Okay.
It was explained to us that there are 7 different dimensions, and that Jesus taught that we have 2 bodies, a physical body and a spirit body. But in actuality, he wasn't telling the whole truth, because he understood that people wouldn't be able to understand it in those days. We have two main bodies, a spiritual body and a physical body, but the spiritual body has 7 different parts to it. It represents, it's actually 7 different bodies. You know those Russian dolls they used to make, that you open it up and there's another one inside, you open it up, there's another one inside.
Yeah.
Your spirit body is like that, with 6 different spirits inside the one, each one corresponding to the different levels of the spirit world, so that if there's a person ready to speak with you from the highest level, they would speak through that 7th body. Okay, so if the control room could run that tape now, please.
He did so disappointed and frustrated. During his lifetime, Jesus demonstrated the gifts of the Spirit, but he did not teach the science behind the gifts. To remedy this situation, Jesus chose a medium, Saul, who was on his way to Damascus to persecute members of the new Christian religion. When Saul, whose name was changed to Paul, heard Jesus' voice, it changed his life. He agreed to become Jesus' medium. Jesus began to teach the sciences of the gifts of the Spirit through Paul's mediumship. Therefore, it is Jesus, through Paul, who explained that we have 2 bodies, a physical body and a spiritual body, in the 15th chapter of the 1st book of Corinthians. We live in the physical body when we live in the physical world. At death, we lay aside the physical body, and our soul, which is our spirit body, goes on to live in the spirit world. This simplistic truth was easily understood by people living in the 1st century. However, Jesus did not teach the complete truth, because the 1st century people lacked the scientific knowledge to understand that we have 7 bodies, not 2. There are 7 levels on which we can live. The first is the Herdisan, which is our physical world. Then the dividing line between the physical world and the spirit world is called the veil. The second level is infrared, the lowest level of the spirit world. This is where the most negative spirits reside. The third level is called visible light. The 4th level is where the more spiritual entities reside. This level is ultraviolet and is the plane where physical beings can receive healing. Beginning with the 5th level, we come to the spiritual levels of X-ray, gamma ray, and the 7th level is the Godhead, whose residents are ascended masters and have all-knowingness. These levels are not like stairs, but ranges of frequency. When death comes to the physical body, the spirit body leaves the physical, and when it hits the veil, continues to increase in frequency until it reaches its own level of frequency where it stops. Each level is a step along an evolutionary path towards total enlightenment that exists in the Godhead. We have 7 bodies, 1 for each level of spirit. We have a Herdisan body, an infrared body, a visible light body, an ultraviolet body, an X-ray body, a gamma ray body, and a Godhead body. They are not really separate distinct bodies all in a row, but are concentric, with the outer edges of it comprising bands around the auric field of the body. Again, the aura is the light field that surrounds the body.
The source of the aura is your soul. If your brain were completely working, you would be able to communicate with spirits from all levels of the spirit world.
Okay. Thank you, Sidney. That was well put together. So even though we are here in the physical, we still have different levels of spiritual body within us.
Yes.
As well as when we pass on to the spiritual world, traveling through the different levels of, what do I want to say, of that dimension, of the dimensions.
If you take Carl over here, okay, he's a medium, so he's a good example because the spirit people can communicate with him.
Okay.
If his grandmother comes through to talk to him,
Yeah.
it's going to be on a different frequency than A1 talks to him because A1's in the Godhead. I'm sure his grandmother didn't make the Godhead yet. So each of those bodies are employed depending on where that person is. It's kind of like telephone lines going into the different frequencies so that those people can communicate with the medium. Theoretically, we're all mediums. We all have that ability, but it's been blocked in our brains because of the theology that most religions teach. They make us afraid to be in communication with the spirit world. But the wiring is there.
Okay.
I have been told by 3 entities from spirit, I mean, many times in my life, way back when I was a little boy, that they knew me when I was placed in the womb because I wanted to know why I hear voices. My father can't hear it. My mother can't hear it. I thought for years that they really lied to me, but they didn't lie to me. They just didn't have the ability to hear.
Okay.
And I remember my father saying one time, son, I don't know of anybody that could speak to earth, people on earth and heaven at the same time, and it's whatever it is you're talking about, it sounds just like what Jesus would do.
Huh.
Well, I asked questions all the way through, but these 3 entities would always tell me, sometimes it appeared to me just as real as you people are, that they knew me before I was placed in the womb.
Huh. Now, that's not just happening only now. Actually, Sidney, you've researched many examples in the Bible where various people will have people travel with them, talk to them, and communicate with them.
Well, just like Abraham had 3 visitors. You know, It's
Right.
interesting. Carl said three people were coming to him. 3 people came to Abraham.
Right.
Yes, that's true.
I don't know if you had, I think you had brought some other examples
Yes.
of these situations in the Bible.
Well, if the control room can bring up what the stills that we call the quotes in the book of John, chapter 14, verse 16. The King James Bible reads, and I will pray, this is Jesus speaking, I will pray the Father, and he shall send you another comforter, that he may abide with you forever. Well, that word comforter is actually spirit control. He's saying there's going to be another spirit around to give you information. And of course, through the years in the many different Bibles, there have been many different ways that they translated the word comforter. The Reams Bible uses the word paraclete, and that was the actual Greek word. And the word connotes like a lawyer, an advocate, which is what the Mace Bible used. Monitor was used by the Thompson Bible, helper, intercessor, counselor, pleader, consoler, another to befriend you, friend, spokesman, if we can have the next slide, friend, spokesman, someone else to stand by you, an advisor, encourage you, the Holy Spirit, Melitz Yosher. Now that's a Hebrew expression. It comes from the Orthodox Jewish Bible, and the consolator. So these are different words that the Bible has taken that word paraclete, which is supposed to be someone to represent you, kind of like in court, but it's really a spirit person that's supposed to guide you, help you, and educate you. Because later on it says that this counselor is going to reteach you everything I taught you to bring it to mind. So it's supposed to be a spirit teacher in the spirit world, and yet or an angel, or any of these other words that they've used, because these translators keep trying to change the meaning of this.
Now, you hear all the time that people don't want, or churches I should say, don't want people to talk to anyone in the spirit world because they're not going to help them. They might lead them down the wrong path, which would be being influenced by the devil and demons. But you're actually giving many, many examples where they're saying, open yourself to this. These people are there to help you in the spirit world. They're here to guide you. Again, very confusing message.
The New Testament talks about don't quench the spirit. don't neglect your spiritual gifts that were given to you by laying on of hands. This is all in the Bible, but in the Council of Nicaea, put in all the other stuff, and they make the theologians focus on the stuff which prohibits mediumship, because they don't want their dogmas contradicted by spirit people.
Now, you've said many times before, Carl has also said this, that many religions don't want you to read the Bible because they don't want you to know and they don't want you to question.
That's right.
But I'm also thinking now, why would you want to read the Bible? Because it's garbage.
There's a lot of psychic truth in the Bible. There's a lot of man-made garbage, as you call it, in the Bible too. So you need to read the Bible with an educated eye. If you understand psychic phenomena and psychic science, and then read the Bible, it's very easy to pull the wheat from the chaff. You know exactly what is true and what isn't.
Okay.
They want this message recorded on this machine right now. They said, they've already told me this before, but they reminded me right now to talk about it, that because of these programs that we're doing, there's going to be somebody who will approach me. They're being paid from a slush fund that's sponsored by religions, and they will want me to be tested. And they said that you are not to be tested, because if you are tested, they're going to try to prove you are a medium or you're not a medium. That the spirit people will turn their back on me, and they will not be there to help me to prove it, because in the past, he'll probably back me up here, there's been many people that have been tested, and the information that was purchased by the biggest church on the planet. Big money paid for it, and the records were destroyed.
I have a section of books, a journal from the parapsychological organization here in this country, and they had this one medium, he was a trumpet medium, I think, tested thoroughly. I had never heard of him. So they just squelched his information, let alone the one that happened very recently, where it was announced that this medium was tested, and all the scientists on TV said that she was definitely genuine, and that it was all squelched. You never heard of it. So this is very true.
I sat in the presence of that medium about 52 times, according to my record. I would swear on a stack of Bibles 2 miles high, this is the most genuine medium I've ever sat in the presence of in my whole life. And there were 12 scientists from all over the world that went there and tested her out in her natural state, and then tested her with him inside the body, using the body. And not one word, not even one word, one sentence has ever been released to the public, and I'm still waiting for that.
What a shame.
I'm going on 7 years.
What a shame.
7 years. And the entity finished his teachings and went back to his own planetary system.
I don't
So
blame
they're refusing me. They're telling me I am never to be tested, because the information will be purchased by the church and it will be destroyed, just like with her.
So much of the information that A1 says, like almost 99.99% of it, has been documented through historical sources. So where's this information coming from?
Yeah.
Because there's things in there that I thought, when I heard them, that were totally inaccurate. This just happened recently. I thought the spirit was off by several hundred years, but they weren't.
Yeah.
It turned out to be exactly the way they said.
Well, I'm going to do something that's a little devious here, because I know how Carl does not have a big ego, and he doesn't like people to pat him on the back. He doesn't always welcome many compliments, but I had noticed that this card had come to Carl recently, and it was actually commending him on something that he did, and I was going to read it, just a brief piece of it to our viewers, as far as talking about a valid medium, and Carl didn't really know that I was going to do this. And it says, "Dear Carl, just a quick note to thank you for talking to me on the phone. You told me that my house would sell to a retired couple within 3 days, and it did, underline exclamation point. You've still got it. Keep in touch," so on and so forth. And I just wanted to share that with our viewers, because this man here does phenomenal things, and he is not a fake. And if he's ever going to be tested, it's not going to be by any religious institution, because
Never.
you know, that would really be stupid, because it wouldn't serve to help anybody to have that information squashed. So if you yourself want to know if this person is valid and his gift is valid, you're always welcome to call the phone number at the end of the program or write to the address, both the email and the mailing address, to pose questions. And I'm sure that Carl would definitely find the time to help you, as he does with everyone. And he is genuine. So I just wanted to share that. Along with that, I had a couple of other questions here, and that had to do with the fact that now all of this information that you've gathered while you've been in trance, while this angel has gone through you, has produced a book. Now you're producing and almost done with a second book.
Yes.
Unless there was more you wanted to talk about right now about angels and spirit controls, I thought you might want to share with our viewers sort of up to date what's going on with the release or the potential release of the new book.
Well, before he jumps in here, let me say this much. This entity, A1, wants this book printed because he said there are so many people all over the planet that is suffering because of these rumors and because of all of this, and he wants the world to understand what caused all of this. And so he's been given the job to produce this book. And this book is an atom bomb as far as I'm concerned. So you can take over from there.
Thank you. We have a few minutes left. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that.
Well, basically what the book is called Crossovers, and it examines the origins of homosexuality. And we've discussed before how a religion in the Hittite kingdom established the practice of female souls entering male bodies, and because the soul was female, it was attracted to another male, and that's how homosexuality began. It also goes into how homosexuality was talked about in the cultures, especially within the Bible, and how religions have handled it. And it basically explores how Christianity has launched a campaign to go after homosexuals and condemn them, basically not because they're that upset with the practice of homosexuality, but because homosexual men tended to be fantastic mediums, and they were really out to silence the mediums. But because it was politically incorrect to go after the mediums who were called prophets in those days, when St. Paul's saying they wanted you educated in the gifts of the Spirit and everybody should prophesy, they couldn't say we don't want prophets. So they said we don't like homosexuals, let's kill them, and that way they killed the prophets and the mediums, and they weren't able to bring forth the Ascended Master's messages, contradicting all the Christian dogma. Basically, there's a certain church fathers who were very much in the forefront of bringing this about, and this book explores all that history.
Wow. The book is called Crossovers, folks. Keep your eyes and ears open. It's going to be hitting the media soon, and you heard it here first. We only have a very short bit left, so I'm going to wrap up this show that we called Angels. And I want to thank these two angels, Sidney Schwartz and Carl Hewitt, and remind our viewers that you can call and receive this book. And the number's 443-3201. There's an address to write to and an email address at the end of the show. Thank you for watching and opening your mind. Be well until next time.